Howdy guys, my name is Lynchy and welcome back to a game called A Case of Distrust. Now this was on Game Jolt, it's won a bunch of awards, I know, but it looks really good and I love the music in it. I just might turn it up though, because you know, I'm deaf and I can't hear. There we go. So, the settings haven't got much really. There's medium, large, I put them as medium, mouse sensitivity, or whatever, save settings. It's gonna restart, but whatever. Bow, bow, bow. So, see what it's like. Awoke in my desk chair. Oh. Across from me were his piercing amber eyes. They surprised me at first, but I should have known he'd be there. I stretched and said, mid-yawn, "Not very nice to sneak into a sleeping woman's apartment!" But his stare just continued. I cursed the open window. You cursed the open... Oh, like... Of course, that's how he'd answer. I'd hoped to finally rest my eyes a while, but fate often disagrees with me. I knew I didn't have what he wanted. Jesus Christ. Reaching into my coat, I took out my knife and flicked it open. I held the knife steady, while staring back at him. "Look!" I said, nodding towards the desk. "That's all that there is there. Take it or leave it." But a detective knows when she is beat. And I knew then he wanted to search the place. And that's what he would do. I sighed. Knowing my weakness for his type. "Alright," I said. "Let's look." He let out a gleeful meow in victory. I cut a piece of my apple that the cat had rejected. Always the sore winner, I jabbed, but I was smiling too because I was telling the truth. There was absolutely no other food in my apartment. Oh Jesus, I love this art, music and art stuff. I love this sort of music. The cat often dropped by to scavenge. He made a lot of noise when he thought I was holding out on him. But right now, the place was clean and empty. Woo! No food anywhere. I had to prove to him. Bird? I kept a small statue underneath the side table. It had been police evidence in a crime, and its owner hadn't wanted it back. I took a shine to it, so I snagged it for myself and on my way out of the department. Okay. Cat. The cat had waltzed into my apartment a few years earlier. He kept coming back, though there was rarely a morsel to eat. He continued his loud meowing. Woo! Fuck! Sorry. I proved to him the place was empty of food. Talk to the kitty. "It doesn't matter how doe-eyed you are, kitty pie. We've got no food around," I told him. Oh. He licked his chops and looked at me. Apparently he still didn't believe that. I needed to conduct him somehow. I can't talk. I need to drink Pepsi. Hang on. That was good. To show him something in my apartment that would prove him it was empty. Case summary. There was no cases. Just then. Evidence. Statue. Go back. I went back to the apartment to search for clues that I could show you for him. Okay. Lights. The door was outside world. Oh, no. What? Though the cat would start wailing loud, so I'd get complaints from the neighbours. No, he needed to convince him before I leave. Oh. I had taken copies of old murder cases from the SFPD records when I'd left. I loved reading through them, even though my own contributions were minimal. At that time, I longed for those types of jobs. The truth was, any work was hard to find for a female detective. Wow. Cigarettes, you can't eat cigarettes. Packaged cigarettes were the latest trends, but I still preferred to roll my own. The ashtray was evidence that it was a practice skill. I suppose I had a lot of free time back then. Oh. My old notebook now filled to the brim. I wrote everything down, even the minor details. Never known what can be useful. The first half of my old case is details from the beats. I used to walk in my policewoman days. Of course, policewomen were forbidden from going on patrol, but Lewis often overlooked that rule. Okay. The regular white icebox, tinged yellow with age, half blocked in the kitchen doorway. My income rarely kept much stocked in it, and right now it was empty. Let's show the cat. Kitty, kitty, kitty. Kitty, kitty, kitty. So you won't stop until I can show you that there's no evidence. Icebox. Use that one. I opened the icebox so the cat would see inside. Empty, I told him. That cat looked quizzically at the open door and then back at me. Sorry, fella, there's no grub in there for me either. He stared at me with eyes of disappointment as I felt those big yellow always got to my soul. Thoughts of my family filled my head. Sister, my parents. Sister? My sister Mo had sent a letter with an update of her life in Chicago. She said her and her husband had just purchased a new home outside the bluster of the city. There were 3 young children who were looking forward to move. I'd never told Muriel about those letters. I mostly ignored. Bitch is married and got kids. I don't care. I'm a broke policewoman, bitch. I never told Muriel, but those letters I mostly ignored. At the time, her family was the last thing I wanted to read about. My sister had the ordinary lifestyle that I rejected. I'd wanted to change the world. I wanted to change the world, to bring justice for victims, especially the ones who no longer had a voice. Not that I was helping advance that cause with the types of cases coming my way. My mind spiraled into the usual series of questions. Had I even impacted the women's movement? Had I made any change on society at all? Was my plodding career worth losing traditional happiness? What was the point in the life I had chosen? A loud meow from the cat snaps my thoughts back in the moment. I took a deep breath and grinned back at him. Kitty! Guess you can scream now, I said. Nobody's going to come knocking with food for you, fella. Bye, kid. Hello? Ah! Who's that? At the doorway, there was a regrettably familiar face of Connor Green. I stared at him. I looked past him. His company churned my stomach. It might have been his bergamot perfume which hung around my nostrils like a lingering unwanted guest, or whatever sordid smile, which was forever plastered on his face. Fuck, I'm tired. I'm not even tired. I'm like, wide awake. It's just I yawn when I read. He stared at me through the doorway with a coy smile. Well, ain't you gonna invite me inside? I started closing the door. But he stuck out the feet to stop me. Hey now, he chimed. Foul way to treat customer, Malone. So that was his angle, hiring me as a detective. I wonder what bootlegger would need with a private eye. But he... Oh my god. Jesus Christ. But he never answered without any prompt. I'll make this quick. I can't take this to the hog house or the pigs would laugh me out. Other dicks aren't just here as tempting. His grin widened. Thought this was going to be quick, I said, and I started rolling a cigarette. It wasn't quick, and I already rolled and lightened the second smoke. When Green finally finished the story, I noted the important bits in my book. Ooh! I had started with the letter slipped under the door in a white envelope. The envelope contained a single typewritten leaf, which he had handed to me. It read, "End your game, or we'll end you." It had no signature, instead ending with only a small scribble in the bottom right corner that resembled a black hand. Green had a lead on the rum-narring scheme. A connection from Vancouver, he had given a sample to Tiny Paul, the gangster who ran the Tin Spoon speakeasy for mob boss Jerry Ferry. Ferry? Oh God. They had agreed to buy in for more. Green summarized the letter what was about his rum running. He suspected Redstone Stable, another bootlegger, of sending the letter. He told me that Stable ran a barber shop during the day and gave me the address. Green needed to know who the threat was. He'd get Paul's gang to deal with them, and continue his scheme to get rich. If I wanted to go snooping myself, he concluded, folks see me, I'm not trusting people, not trust leads to no customers. I need to play it low key. I don't know why I'm talking like that. Which is where you come in. That's what she said. I raised an eyebrow and stared at him through the cigarette smoke. Something in his yarn still twisted. He must have noticed my resistance, because he said, I worked closely with Lewis. I'm sure he'd want to protect me as much as any other victim. My Uncle Lewis had put me on the force. I'd finally accepted Lewis's death. I'm still searching for answers for Lewis. After his death, he had been a man obsessed with helping victims and bringing justice to those beyond salvation. With other ethos I never understood. Freak me! Did you hate that? I'm getting really into this, and it's like, oh no. Those thoughts haunted me. I'd quit the SFPD and started my own practice. Taking his philosophy, was Green worth my time? Would he be worth Lewis? Green tipped off my uncle in a few cases. I wonder if that was enough to warrant my protection. Before I could think past my headache, he threw a bill in my lap. Keep the C-note as a retainer. What? And don't worry about getting in touch. I'll find you later for a chat. He turned down the hallway and I let him go. If he was willing to give me $100, fuck yeah! With no commitment, I wouldn't be stopping him. Son gave me $100 for doing a case. Fuck yeah. I turned back to my apartment, still confused about the whole story. My headache wasn't helping either. Whenever I lacked clarity, a trip to the Southern Coffee was usually the cure. So do I go now? I mouthed the gold plate on the outside read, PC Malone Private Investigator. Leave. There was only one place I needed to go clear my head. Southern Coffee was a basement dive. It wasn't modern, hip, or ever busy, and it was my favorite place to down some paint, especially in the company of the best bartender in the city. Oh, bye. That must be my Uber. I gave him my address and slouched in the back of the seat in the taxi cab. I thought a good way to pass the journey might be to chat with the driver. Talk. He was young, not a teenager, but not far off. The redness in his face and this mean scowl told me he was angry. Don't much like driving taxi cabs? I offered. He looked quizzingly at me through the rearview mirror, understanding what I meant. No, lady. I like it, right enough, just some bozo. For you. For you, we're in here. I'm going to try an accent. I'm sorry if I suck. For you, we're in here. Was giving me hell. Because I look like the boy his daughter's going with. Went off about how my generation was ruining America. That scumbag don't know Jack. He doesn't know Jacksepticeye? Oh, he's a great YouTuber. You should, send him a link. Fuck. It sounds like you know. I wasn't much. Sounds like you know more, I asked. I'm no genius, he replied, but talk to anyone from the last century and they'll tear off your ear from just being young. How'd they get so high, I wonder, given the world in the 1890s like a smooth-running roadster? Then that they do. Bash it on every curb in sight. They greed their war, their politics, and they give us their ruins or clunker. In their our manners when we grab the keys. I agreed. I agreed with him. The Great War was the hardest fought, at home, abroad, I said. The old men who had put us there had some nerve, he replied hotly. And after those years they tell us to get in line? It was a bum deal to me, sister. Girl. She's driving. We're in the information age and the news of the world is crap. They're just angry that they can see their folly. The taxicab rolled to a stop. Anywho, the driver said, thanks for letting me blow off some steam. Have a nice day, miss. I opened the car door and stepped out. Southern Cross was an automatic diner. Ethel Burgess was a lone waitress who was friendly to help with any inquiry. Of course, if you winked at her right, she'd show you the way to the downstairs toilet. What? Where Frankie played the bathroom attendant? What? Southern Coffee had a... I thought I just heard shooting. Southern Coffee had the distinct feeling of home. The familiar smell of mold in that old basement was enough to put a grin on my face. Haha. Frankie, the tin bar at the Southern Coffee, thought it wasn't his place. I'd never caught a whiff of the real owners. They trusted Frankie enough to do what he did. Let's talk to Frankie. I said, hello, Frankie, and was met with a smile and a grunt from frankly Ernest Conway. He was a big fella, both wide and tall. He must have been a little over 50. He had a round head, kind of brown eyes, and a cropped ring of grey hair encircling on otherwise bald scalp. His voice had warm timbre that complemented the tobacco and whiskey smell of his speakeasy. I sat at the bar. You got the spooks, Pissy? He asked. You're worn as a catcher's mitt. I suppose my exhaustion showed. I won $100 for nothing and I can't let it go. I told Frankie about the case, the threatening letter sent to Connor Green and how he assumed it was related to his bootlegging and his suspicion of the Redstone stable. The story took longer than I'd wanted, frankly showing genuine interest by asking many questions. When I finished, he threw me the whiskey scale and he had been stirring. I took a large gulp and gave a sigh of thanks. Well, Green's case is better than most of what you've given, he said with some enthusiasm. At least it's not more of that adultery bunk. Sure, I replied. But I started with a goal in mind. What's the point in helping a man like Green? Frankie clicked his tongue on his teeth. Lawyer of priest. Why is it that the man? Let me ask you. Are the clients you have now the types you want to help? I refused to admit that they weren't. I like my current clients just fine. You're always riled up when you've backed into the corner, Malone. You don't have to fool me as long as you're alright fooling yourself. I sighed and stared down at my drink. I just fucking said that. My daze was interrupted by the basement door opening and then slamming shut. A small blustering woman began marching in towards. She looked younger than me. She looked mad. She looked younger, 25. She was a few inches shorter than my 5'6". I thought her grey trench coat was too large for that small frame, which was then I realized it was exactly like the one that had belonged to Lewis. She hurled insults at me. All I could do was sit there and take it. until she started breathing heavily. I set my drink on the bar and looked her in the eyes. I inserted a hello. I'm Phyllis Malone. How can I help? Accompanied by a smile as genuine as I could muster. That knocked her off balance. She stumbled over her next few words. And I added, "And you are?" The flame returned to her eyes. Between the clenched teeth, she hissed, "I'm the wife of that bum who sneaks into your bed!" I upped, "The cat?" But humour wasn't her angle, and she launched into another poetic stanza. "And he just left your sty this morning," she finally ended. But that was when I gathered she was Connor Green's wife. "Miss Green, I am a PI, not a homewrecker, and I don't think your husband, in this line of business, would want to bed a narrow dick anywho." She looked at me incredibly. "A woman in that line of work?" she questioned. "I don't believe it." I opened my notebook and flipped through the pages. "You see, Miss Green, this is what I do. There's not much more I can show you to prove it." She still looked more coaxing for her to believe me, but eventually she came around and she seemed grateful that I explained it to her. Apparently, she had seen her husband leave my apartment, and distraught, she had followed me all the way to Frankie's basement and decided to confront me. I suppose I lost my head after that. I thought I'd seen... Frankie, chivalrous to a depleted girl, came around the bar and held her up. "Now, that's alright, Miss Green. Why don't I hail you a cab and send you on back home?" She agreed, and they walked together up the stairs. When Frankie returned, I said to him, "You turned night real quick." He snorted and laughed. "Oh, hell. We can't have that siren in here. With a torture yelling like that, every street bugger would have come to her rescue." Miss Green is a torch singer? Well, I learned that she was a Mrs. Connor Green just now. When she came in here, I'd only seen her as a Lily Fanny, singing lead for the jazz band at the Tin Spoon. "The Tin Spoon?" I said. "Tiny Paul's joint? That's where Green is selling his liquor? Say, you think that's where she met her husband?" I laughed. "You're the real sleuth, Frankie." He made a sarcastic bow. I shook my head. "You're telling me you escorted our little torture out just to avoid a bit of hot water?" Frankie flushed and said, What are you talking about, Miss Malone? I'm never good with my emotions, but it was plain that Frankie had instantly fallen for the girl. "So, what if I had more to squeeze out of her?" I asked. "What more could you possibly want from Lily Fanny? She can't have anything." I considered Frankie's point. Maybe she's unrelated to this case. I shrugged and stood up from the bar stool. What just happened was quite the ruckus. It seemed like my cue to move along. Let's go upstairs. The worn stairs led me to outside world. I was heading up the stairs when Frankie called after me. "So what are you going to do?" I've been thinking about Lil Fanny. I suppose they're even mobsters and people who cared about them, and then she'd be wearing Lewis' old jacket. So perhaps Green and Lewis had been closer than I'd realized. "I guess I'll take Connor Green's bait," I replied. But I never got nothing better than on the stove, and he might need the help. Something still stinks though. "Well, what's your plan?" Frankie asked. The way I see it, I have 3 goals right now. Green hired me for the job. Find the guy who wrote the letter. I'm writing this down. I know I've got a thingy, but I'm writing this down because I will forget. Because I'm stupid. Wait, what? Blue pen. Make it bright. Find the guy. Whoops, that's not a G. Who wrote the letter. But you want more? Asked Frankie. I nodded. Green's a shady character. I have to learn about him. Oh crap. Him. Who he is. Oh, who is this guy? Dig in the past. I can't go back to him blind. And then there's something about his bootlegging. Oh shit, sorry. How'd Green get a connection like that? See how messy this is? Stress writing, people. Stress writing. What's his source exactly? Squeezing that lemon might give him more juice. That sounds alright, he replied. So, where is it you're off to? I've got 3 leads. That bootlegger stable, who Green claims sent him the letter, the Tin Spoon Lounge, where I might learn more about Green's rum-running schemes, and Miss Green, who could give me more dirt on her husband. Frankie nodded in approval. Well, if you're ever stuck, come back and see me. Frankie's drunk. You can solve anything you can never solve anything without talking it over. I smiled and went upstairs. Well, guys, I think this is going to be good for now. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, hit that like button. I'll put the link in the description for you guys to play the game. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!